Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of NCBA's Coffee Break. I'm your host, Nathan Willner. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and let's dive into some interesting topics today. I'm really excited to have Arnel Manalo with us today. He's the Chief Security Officer and VP Assurance Americas, and he's our guest. So welcome. Let me just tell our listeners a little bit about Arnel. Arnel has nearly 2 decades of progressive IT and cybersecurity experience. He's developed and supported comprehensive cybersecurity programs across various industries globally. His expertise includes aligning compliance, reducing risk, and partnering with key stakeholders to meet business objectives. Arnel's leadership has been instrumental in delivering top-notch cybersecurity services to financial services, healthcare, media, and other sectors. So that's a pretty impressive thing, Arnel.
Definitely.
Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. Appreciate the introduction.
Yeah, so let's kick it off and tell our listeners what this is all about. So let's talk about the recent transition from the NCBA subcontractor program to the Committed to Security program. What is this about, and what motivated this change?
Definitely. So, with really the ever-changing landscape of threat and risk management, and dive down into third and fourth party supply chain risks, it needs a program that can stay up with the times, can know the industry, understand the pain points that are being driven through a lot of audit fatigue, and then take all those in and really make the process a lot more streamlined, reduce redundancy, and not lose the core mission of measuring risk.
That makes an awful lot of sense. So maybe you can walk us through like what are the key enhancements in the new Committed to Security program compared to the previous one? Like how is this better?
Yeah, definitely. So one of our aims is there's a lot of audits that go on. There's a lot of frameworks. There's a lot of verifications to ensure we're protecting data. And what we've built is a way to take in those sorts of data points and information and use that in our risk model so that we're not asking redundant questions. And then the other point of that is really understanding, okay, what is this vendor? What are they doing? Is it a process server? Is it a call center? Are they going out and meeting with scripted contact or unscripted contact? What kind of data are they handling? And so we're taking that lens and scope into it's not a one size fits all. And so there's a lot of security controls. There's a lot of practices that go into making sure we're following appropriate procedures, policies, governance, and regulation, and really take all that in and provide a report and a rating that if whoever consumes that report, they understand the size and scope of the target, they understand the kind of data, the processes that they handle, and then they can digest really quickly the risk and the temperature of the items we had. And so it allows whoever's receiving that to understand all the items that were looked at, the entire scope, understand the risk if it's, low, medium, high, have it out there real nice and clean and understandable so it could be easily digested and expedite decision makers. So,
Yeah, no, I mean that really sounds impressive. So just so I understand, first it's, kind of breaking down the kinds of vendors and specifically each one of their steps in the process and what they really do. And then once that happens, it'll make I guess the entire process easier for the law firms and the vendors. And that's the point, right? So
exactly.
let's talk about the Sanctum Hub. How it operates, what's the benefit, and does it offer cross departmental teams? Kind of walk us through what that is.
Definitely. So, companies, vendors, law firms are made up of lots of different teams, lots of different departments, different, technical knowledge, different skills, and different lenses on how they address and assess, vendors or other entities that they're going to do business with. And so, with that and the data that we capture, we allow to present different views, different data points, so that, if you're someone in HR and you really want to focus on potential onboarding, offboarding, and those sorts of things, you can dive in there. If you're technical and you really want to get in the weeds with, their firewalls and all the other technical acronyms that other people's eyes glaze over when they start diving into those, we can show that information. And that way it's targeted to those who need to digest it and then it's also actionable. So they can understand, digest, review the information, reach out for questions, items like that. And the other thing we really pride ourselves on is feedback. We understand industry is changing. Others have different perspectives. Others have, specific things that they want to dive into. And there's other various reasons why they might want to ask a certain question or get some sort of evidence of some sort of control or policy or process in place. We can take all that in and take that feedback and grow this program with the industry as well. So it's not a one-stop shop. It's is what it is all the time. It's a one-stop shop that's continuously growing. It's a continuously feedback loop. We want to make sure we reduce audit fatigue, that everyone absorbs this information and ultimately gets to the point where they trust it, where if they've gone through the committed security program and assessment partnership with the NCBA, they know, yep, they asked my questions. I trust the information, the review that they did. We don't need to hammer this vendor or target or whoever with another 15, reviews of the controls that they get asked. There's a lot of redundancy going on. And so our biggest drive is to reduce the audit fatigue, build that trust with the industry. We want to reach out and join the conferences, become part of the community, and really grow this so everyone has a hand in it, and it's something we all, use in our daily lives.
Yeah, and I guess, and as this develops and new vendors, if there's a vendor that industry isn't using currently or one that hasn't gotten to, you're going to hopefully onboard them and work them in the process. So the goal is a one stop for the both the vendors and the law firms, and you're going to take care of all the hard work, right?
Oh, definitely. Yes. And with those is really those times we dive in to say, cool, well, we're talking technical controls right now is really good. Well, can we start talking about, maybe some CFPB processes, or do we want to do these other things? And, we'll have those discussions and we'll come to the table and sit down and say, okay, what does that look like? How much do we want to put into this? And really build those areas out where there could be some unique situations where, law firm A comes in and sees this view, law firm B comes in and has these other items. These vendors come in here and they categorize by, platform types and the services they provide. And from there, this becomes an area where it's fully transparent and understanding and you get the information you need without having to jump around a bunch of different documents and different systems and multiple phone calls and emails and things, and you could just get in there and get what you need and trust that it's been valid. And you could see when it was last reviewed and a continuous monitoring of the environment.
That's really fantastic. So I know part of what we were talking about is risk-based ratings. So
Mhm.
can you explain how that rating system works and what factors go into making that assessment on to evaluate the risk?
Definitely. So risk-based decisions, really, it comes down to businesses need to understand what is the risk in entering a partnership. And so the factors we take into, we mentioned a little bit earlier, is the vendor type. So if you know that it's going to be a call center and they're going to be calling, okay, there's going to be audio, they're going to be interacting, that introduces risks. Okay, they're a letter vendor. They're going to be printing out templates and other items like that. What needs to be in those letters and all those other pieces that could bring another risk. So knowing what these vendors do adds some certain data elements and factors into our risk. And then we go into, technical controls. Who handles the data? Do they have proper, roles and responsibilities? Access controls? Do they do testing? Other items like that. And so from their technical program to what I call their soft controls, their policies and interactions. We take those in and all those factor into ultimately what the risk is. So if they have, a very highly regulated environment that, let's say a third party auditor has gone through and has attested to their controls, we'll look at those reports and we'll say, hey, here's all the types of risks and categories and data that was looked at. We'll factor those in. And then when we take all that data, we'll say, okay, if they're following all the best practices, they're compliant with name your alphabet soup for your regulations or compliance that you received. And we gather it up, say, yep, they met it all, they're a low risk. Or B, we can say, okay, well, they touch a lot of card data and worst case scenario, they don't have any program in place. They don't even have antivirus on their pieces. And worst case scenario, we'll be like, unfortunately, you're a high risk. Where we also like to add in scope though, because companies are different sizes where some can have a very large, robust program. They have the funding to build those up. And there might be smaller businesses that say, we'd like to do that, but unfortunately, we don't have, the capital or money to invest in that program. But we do meet some of these baseline controls. And so the vendors can go and law firms can go in there and say, okay, well, maybe we only do, 3 or 4 transactions with this vendor a year, even though they may not have those items in there. And from this perspective, they might be high risk, but for us internally, the amount we use them, it's so low that if something did happen or occur with this vendor, it's going to be non-impact for us. And so really we just want to build that transparency and allow that risk to be transparent, and then you can digest and build that into your own internal risk processes and make a really educated, well-informed, data-driven decision.
And it really, as you're speaking, it becomes really evident to me that this kind of program is beneficial to various different sizes of vendors and law firms. It's not just for the big law firms or the big vendors. Sure, that's going to be needed, but I think it's really important that our listeners understand that this is a program that can be tailored and used for various different sizes of law firms. So don't think this isn't for you. It's definitely worth reaching out and finding out more and to see how this can really make you know your law firm management much easier. So that's been really insightful. We're getting close to the end of our cup of coffee, so to speak. So lastly, how can creditors and law firms and vendors use the portal to evaluate this risk and make data-driven decision that it fits for the size of their companies?
Definitely. And so one of the things we understand, and this goes across industry, is scoping. That is so important in an engagement, is to understand how large an entity is, what the type of work they do, the kind of data they handle. And that first step already comes in and allows a law firm or whoever's logging on, a vendor or whoever, to understand, okay, this is what this is going to look like. Here's the environment. Here's my expectations. And from there, we can have different views. We can have different items that they want to dive into of, okay, well, over here's a skip tracer, and I want to look into these sorts of controls. Or B, this vendor does this over here, and I want to make sure these sort of areas are on here. So from there, what law firms and vendors can expect is, if on the vendor side and you're being, assessed to look at your program, of, we're not going to come in and ask for controls that are, super high level that a very large enterprise might have. It may or may not be, and that really comes down to the very first part of the engagement, is to understand the business, understand the risks you bring to the industry, and then we want to curtail our questionnaire and our scope so it's applicable. We want to make sure that everyone's time is being used efficiently. The message is very clear and transparent, and different, law firms or creditors or whoever's going to look at this, they have different perspective and lens. They have different thresholds of risk. And so we're going to go through, work out, build out those items. And then the biggest part of this too is it's ever growing and evolving. It's that feedback loop. How do these come in? There's always yearly, monthly new laws and regulations coming out, new questions being asked, right? Everyone's talking about AI. Okay, well, let's start talking about AI controls. And then right after that, we're going to be talking about quantum encryption and quantum readiness. And so we're forward looking, and we're understanding, as here we are right now today, in March of 2025. How are we going to look in the end of 2025? What's on the threshold? What's out there? And then not only that, but to create these communities where we can discuss of, oh, well, there's some really big breaches or hacks going on over this way, or hey, this state over here has these new privacy laws that are coming up. How are we going to handle those sorts of things? And really, we want to take all that in, listen to the industry, and we want to grow this, that it's usable, it's adopted, and it's actually bringing value rather than just another checkbox. And oh, here we go again. We got to have our policies ready and our controls, and we got to hop on the phone and spend multiple weeks going through another thing. Is we want to make it painless. We want to be transparent, but we want to be accurate as well is the biggest thing. And so it's a balancing act that we want to really strive for and make sure we're bringing the most value to everyone.
No, that and it sounds really great, and and I think that you really hit the nail on the head when you talk about emerging technology, and it's happening so quickly and so rapidly.
Mhm.
2 years ago, artificial intelligence was maybe science fiction. Now every high school kid knows
Oh yeah.
how to utilize it. So um, you got to stay part of it. And really, and what's also I think you mentioned that's so important is that technology used to be the realm of the wealthy, the large,
Hmm.
the big corporate entities. You needed a warehouse just to put the computer in it.
Oh yeah.
Um, Things are happening really quickly these days, and you need a company like yours to be able to understand the technology, but also to understand how to evaluate the risks because new technology opens the door to new risks. So with that, I just hopefully this is going to be just one of the many cups of coffee you and I have, where we talk about how this thing develops and new vendors come on, and really kind of show how this thing is going to make law firm owners' lives much easier.
Definitely.
So excited. So anyway, so thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing all the valuable information, Arnel. It's been really a pleasure having you here today, and to everyone joining us on listening in on our coffee break. Thank you for being a part of NCBA's coffee break session. Arnel, hopefully you'll come back for a future cup,
Definitely.
and wish all our listeners to have a great day.
Would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.